Good morning. It is Thursday at 11 a.m., which means it's time for Fresh Fit Fall from Maryland Snap Ed. My name's Krissa. I'm your host, and we are here to talk about the fresh, wonderful things coming from Maryland farms in the season of autumn, and also ways to stay active through the cooler weather. So this is actually our last episode of Fresh Fit Fall. At the end, we'll be talking about what's next for Maryland Snap Ed's Facebook Live. And of course, because it is approaching Thanksgiving, a wonderful time to celebrate the harvest, we'll be talking about some topics relevant to the upcoming holiday. So welcome if you're joining us for the first time. Welcome to repeat viewers. As always, we love to know who's here with us. So introduce yourself in the comments. Tell us your name and what county you're joining us from if you're in Maryland, or your city and state if you're joining us from outside of Maryland. Comments and questions are always welcome, and we'll respond to them as we go. So let's get right to it. We are joined today by Haley Starrick. Haley is our nutrition educator and project leader in Frederick County, Maryland. And she has been with Snap Ed for a very long time, one of our most experienced educators. And so we are very excited to have her with us today. So welcome, Haley. And can you go ahead and get us started and let us know what we're talking about today? What's fresh this fall?
Sure. Thanks, Krissa, for not making me feel too old today. But yes, I have been with Snap Ed for a very long time. And, what's really wonderful about working for Snap Ed is, we always get to talk about food. And so today I'm really excited to not only just talk to you about food, some things that are fresh from Maryland today, but also the holidays are coming up. It's a wonderful time to spend with your family, enjoy family meals, and make sure that everyone's bellies are full. And so I really, I jumped at the chance to actually share specifically this recipe and this time of year because it's really absolutely one of my favorites. Today, specifically, we're going to jump into something that has been a little bit of a challenge for my family. So it's actually really great to share with you guys some of my challenges, and hopefully you will have some feedback for me about how you can make this food work for your family. But we're talking about squash. And so again, I have a husband who was not a very big fan. I have to kind of sneak it into his meals, and he doesn't know it. So I really hope he's not tuning in this morning because the secret will be out. But if you have someone like that at your house, again, we'd like for you to share, how do you get squash into their meals? Because right now, especially in Maryland, it seems like squash is everywhere. Your neighbors might have it that they can share along with you and pass on. People are kind of, trying to make sure that everybody has access to squash. And when you go into the grocery store, it's also something that you're seeing right now that is less expensive than some other vegetables. So it's a really great thing to fit into your diet. Specifically, we're talking about, let me go grab it over here. This adorable little gem. This is an acorn squash, namely named because it's the shape of an acorn. And so at home, or at your grocery store, the squash could look very different. And so there's not really, while we're highlighting today acorn squash, I also want to tell you that if you have a different squash at home, or if you like a different squash, there's really no squash police that would, come to your house and tell you that you can't use a certain squash. So a lot of these squash, they do have like similar flavors, similar nutrients, and so they're constantly interchangeable. So that's really one of the best things about squash, is that when you go to the grocery store, that especially this time of year, they have lots, but there's really no squash rolls.
Yeah, and before we move on, I want to say a quick welcome to Terry, Lynn, Chris, Aaron, and Lauren. Thanks for joining us. So it's interesting, sort of my squash story. I love all types of winter squash. I love how dense they are, and they get sweet in the oven. My husband, though, his beef with squash is that it's too sweet for him. So he thinks vegetables should not be sweet, which is interesting because I think this recipe that we're going to make in a little bit really does pair sort of the sweetness, but in a sort of more savory preparation. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds.
Oh, yes. If you haven't tried this with him, I think that this might actually be the segue into his, squash fan.
That's good. And one last thing to mention before we talk a little bit more specifically about choosing squash is that not a lot of farmers markets have ended in Maryland, but there are definitely, farmers markets. I know of two, and I'm in the Baltimore area, I know of two that always every year, the last Sunday before Thanksgiving is their final market of the season. So we'll put up a link to the Maryland Farmers Market directory so you can see if there's a market near you that's open this weekend, or so you can do some of your Thanksgiving shopping, especially if you have if that farm market accepts EBT benefits, or if you have PEBT benefits to spend, or can use other benefits like WIC. So that's a great way to extend your budget, is spend some of your benefits at the farmers market. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about squash. We talked about how it can be interchanged with other, acorn with other varieties of squash. How do I know I've got a good squash? How do I pick a good one?
All right, so great. So let me actually step over here, and so everyone can get a really good picture. So the one thing about squash is that you don't actually typically eat the skin. And so there might be some recipes or, some varieties of squash that you're more likely to eat the skin. However, for the butternut, for the acorn squash, for a lot of these winter squash, we are not actually eating the skin. And so you can have a few blemishes, and it's actually, it'll be completely fine. So you're really just looking for one that, again, it's nice and firm. It hasn't had any gouges in it or anything like that. If you see something like that, you could also, one thing that I have actually done is I've spoken with a produce manager and they've discounted it for me. If I see something that it's less likely for the grocery store to be able to sell, I've gone back to them and they've, sold me some, especially winter squash, some of these hardier things that do last a long time if I'm going to eat it, right away. And I just cut off that spot. But right here, I have actually already prepared this in order. One of the challenges that we hear a lot are when people go to cut the squash. Winter squash especially, is very, very firm. And so you want it to be firm. When you're at the grocery store, you don't want it to be soft. And so because it's so firm, a lot of people say that it's very challenging to cut. So what I've done here is you can just take your fork and add some holes, poke some holes into it. And you're just trying to get some air in here. And so you're going to do that all over your squash. And then you can microwave it for 2 to 4 minutes, depending on your microwave. And then it is very, very easy to cut. And so once you've actually prepped it this way, by doing this, you're not damaging the squash in any way. You're not, ruining the recipe at all. You're really just trying to soften it a little bit so that it's easier for you to slice with a knife and not, risk having to, to use a hatchet or, a chainsaw or something like that. So I actually went ahead and I did, I poked this with, the fork, and then I put it in the microwave for 2 minutes. I checked it. It was still very firm. So in this microwave that we have here at the University of Maryland Extension Office in Frederick County, I think it's a lower wattage microwave. And so I did have to go back and cook it for another 2 minutes. So at home, start with that 2 minutes, check it, and then come back and see if that's enough. But after cutting it, so now my knife is actually going in very, very smoothly right here. And, you're just going to hold firmly, and it just slid all the way through.
And now that's not enough to make it, cooked till tender, but it is, like it just starts it softened enough that, it makes cutting easy, because it is, if you're really hacking on a hard squash with a sharp knife and that knife slips, it can be a little scary. So I think that's a great tip for folks who haven't prepared squash before.
Absolutely. One other complaint that we hear from people is that, squash is, again, it's an irregular shape. We've got these, grooves in here, and it doesn't sit flat. So one other thing that you can do is just slice a small piece in the back. Again, you're not damaging the recipe. You're not damaging the squash at all, but just this nice, smooth, flat right here. It'll sit perfectly. So as you see, this one's still kind of wobbly. This one, not even budging.
Great. Yeah, that's a great tip for any round vegetable, which most are. There are very few vegetables that have a flat surface. So wonderful. Great. So one of the reasons we picked squash and the recipe we're going to demonstrate is because we wanted to talk a little bit about doing Thanksgiving on a budget, or at least very, trying not to break the bank with your Thanksgiving menu. So this is actually a recipe that includes some of the Thanksgiving elements. And we wanted to talk about how we can make sure that when we're shopping for Thanksgiving, I'm doing my shopping this weekend, I maybe should have started it earlier, that we are looking for ways to save some money. So what do you got for us, Haley? What are some of your tips for a Thanksgiving that doesn't break the bank?
All right, absolutely. So one of the things that's really important to keep in mind with Thanksgiving is, the real goal of Thanksgiving is to be together with your family. And oftentimes, we really want to make sure that, while we're having a wonderful meal together, the real focus is on, being together and enjoying each other. So I do like to make sure that you choose some things that everyone will like, and make sure that, your family will eat, and your children will eat. But one of the things that I think a lot of times, especially in Thanksgiving, is we put so much focus on the turkey that we kind of forget that, there are so many wonderful side dishes out there that really can be enjoyed by, a lot of people. And so, during this Thanksgiving, right now, we know that, a lot of protein foods, especially turkeys, they might be more expensive for you at the grocery store this year than you've seen in previous years. So, really consider, how much do you need for your family? A turkey breast might be a better option for you rather than, purchasing an entire turkey. There are also a lot of local organizations right now that are donating turkeys. And so if you have the opportunity to take advantage of one of those, donation sites, make sure that you, are able to participate in that, and, find out those resources in your community. But we also find that, the emphasis doesn't necessarily have to solely be on the turkey. We can really make sure that, we're using, other foods to kind of, promote the turkey. So the recipe that we're talking about today will actually be maximizing your food budget, because we're not going to waste those leftovers. And so a lot of times during Thanksgiving, we have, made a lot of food, and then, by Sunday, people are getting sick of it. They don't want to eat it. And so, this will really kind of maximize how we're going to use these leftovers. But even when it comes to planning for Thanksgiving, don't forget that, you could choose canned vegetables. You could choose frozen vegetables. There are a lot of other things that when you go to the grocery store, there are a lot of substitutions that you can incorporate. You could focus, more on the vegetables this year, a little bit less on the meat. Or, if you don't want to break with tradition because you've always served the exact same things, the best thing that you can do is just maximize your leftovers, and make sure that none of your food is going to waste. Really, by their leftovers, if they're going to be stored in the fridge, they need to be consumed by Monday. So really, Monday is the cutoff. However, in order to make sure that you are planning ahead, you may actually have some extra side dishes or extra turkey, and that can be frozen. And so that could be frozen for 2 to 4 months. And that will really, you'll be able to spread out some of those dishes that your family might, quote unquote, get sick of. I would never get sick of it, but some people might. And, so then you can use it for other dishes like the one we're going to demonstrate today, or any other dish that your family enjoys. So I really want to encourage you to, try and maximize your leftovers, consider highlighting some vegetables this year, and take advantage of some local resources that are available to you. Squash is often donated this time of year. I know here in Frederick County, with the Blessings in a Backpack program, we have a local farmer that grew squash, and the children who are participating in Blessings in a Backpack will be receiving squash tomorrow. And so I really want to make sure that any food that you have access to, you're able to use and incorporate it into your family's meals.
Those are great tips. We've posted some links in the chat to some healthy, thrifty holiday menus for Thanksgiving. We also linked to some food safety tips for keeping those leftovers safe. We'll also post some additional squash recipes, which could be included in the Thanksgiving menu. Again, another sort of a way to make vegetables. And squash is a very, very filling vegetable, a bigger part of the menu. So it kind of fills bellies without having to break the bank on the turkey. And then going back to the maximizing your leftovers, not wasting those. let's get into this recipe because this is a really great one that uses so many components of the Thanksgiving dinner leftovers and incorporating them into a new meal. So let's get to it.
All right. Yes. So, okay. You've already seen me prepare the squash, which again, don't be intimidated because, we didn't pre-cook it. We just made sure that it was ready. And so one thing I want to point out here is that the squash is kind of like a bonus food because in addition to actually being able to eat the fleshy part, these seeds are fantastic snacks. So, preparing seeds is not just for not just for Halloween people. So don't ignore the fact that we could, scoop these out. It's very easy with a spoon, and we could roast these. And these are a really great snack to enjoy, or they're really great. I actually like to, put them as salad toppers when I'm having a salad for lunch or for dinner. So I'm just going to empty this out. And I've created a little bit of a bowl, you can see. So I didn't have to work that hard to get all of these seeds out. I've just placed them to the side. Again, I'm going to prepare them after this meal is over. There are lots of resources and tips online for roasting seeds. And so it's really not that challenging. You just want to clean them off and, set your oven and add maybe a little bit of salt. So there are lots of resources that can help walk you through that recipe, but make sure that they don't end up in the trash because that's a really great source of nutrients from those seeds. So acorn squash is adorable because, once I've actually prepared it, we have this little bowl, this little baby bowl here, which, I will actually suggest to you that in my house, when I make this recipe, one of the things that happens is that every single person wants their own baby bowl. They don't like to share. So in my house, while this recipe uses 2 squash and 4, prepares 4, I have to make sure that I have a half for every person in my home. So sometimes when I'm buying this, you might want to consider if you have children who might want their own, and of course we would like to encourage them to consume, as much squash as possible. So you're not going to discourage them from having their own bowl, but you might want to buy the smallest ones that you can find for children, just so that, they can each have their own little baby bowl of acorn squash. All right, so I've prepared that. To my bowl, I'm going to add the leftover ingredients. So at your home, again, we do not have any squash police. So if you have different side dishes in your home, you are more than welcome to substitute, to change, anything that you'd like to add to this squash bowl. So I've preheated the oven for 350 degrees. My squash is prepared. So to this mixing bowl, I'm going to add some leftover stuffing. Go. There we go. Some leftover cooked turkey. This turkey has, again, this is as if it was after post Thanksgiving. I have some leftover turkey. One of the things that I get a lot of questions about, a lot of people might prefer the breast or might prefer the leg, but there are a lot of pieces left over on that turkey that your family may not know what to do with. This would be a wonderful thing to use, some of those pieces of turkey that, people don't want to use on their Thanksgiving plate. I've got some dried cranberries. And then I have some cooked onions. So you could actually add fresh onions. The recipe does actually call for them to be softened. So those have already been pre-softened. In my Thanksgiving dish, one of the recipes that my family actually enjoys is pearl onions. So we already have leftover cooked onions as a dish in our family. So the next thing that we have is just some low sodium chicken broth. Now, a lot of people ask about, why did I choose low sodium chicken broth? So my low sodium chicken broth is always my default. I'm always going to, when I'm purchasing things, I'm always going to choose low sodium because I want to have control over the amount of salt that's in my food. If you've ever tasted a dish that was too salty, it's very difficult to go back and remove that salt from your dish. So I always recommend when you're purchasing canned items or canned vegetables, I always recommend, for any of the, options that there might be a low sodium option, I always recommend for you to choose that low sodium option because then you can always, if it's not salty enough, you can go back and add a dash. but it's very, very difficult to ever take away the salt that's already been cooked into your meal. So when in doubt, typically now, a lot of the low sodium options are the same price. And so there's no cost difference. And I really like having control over that sodium myself.
One other thing, especially since we're talking about reducing waste, one other thing that you can do is if you do buy a whole turkey, once you have picked the meat off the carcass and you've stored that safely in the fridge, or maybe you've frozen some, you can easily make your own broth. And then, so you throw that carcass, all the bones in a pot, add some water. If you want to add a chopped onion, chopped carrot, but you can also just do it plain. And then you can, simmer that for a couple hours, and, cool it, remove the bones, strain it, and that is free from having already bought the turkey. So that's something I do actually. Anytime I cook chicken on the bone, I always throw the bones in a bag in the freezer. And once I have enough of it, I then make broth, and then I never have to buy it. So it does take some, planning and thinking ahead. But, if you're looking for ways to save money, using what you have to its maximum is a great way. So that mixture there, the filling for your squash, looks delicious. I would eat that plain.
Absolutely. So, we will be posting the actual recipe so that you can see the proportions. Today, I'm actually only going to be making one stuffed acorn squash because it's just me. And again, I don't want to waste any of the food today. And so I'm not going to make the entire one. But one of the reasons also why I'm not specifically sharing the exact amounts is because I would like for you at home to experiment with the amount. So, for example, if you like the flavor of cranberries, if you like, a little bit more stuffing, if you like more onion, if at home you have the green beans, I really like for you to kind of prepare the stuffing based on, or filling, not stuffing, but if you prepare this filling based on what your taste preferences are, and there's really not, a set standard for exactly what needs to be included. You do have to add the chicken broth only because it makes it softer to kind of cook together, and you don't want it to dry out when you're preparing it in the oven. But there's really no wrong way to prepare this. And so I would like for you to be encouraged at home. Yes, you can follow along with our recipe, but I really like for you to be encouraged. This is also something that everyone in your family might be interested in making their own. So if every single person got the acorn squash, and then they were allowed to use some of the leftovers to make their own unique creation, you might have a lot more, input buy-in from children who might be unsure about trying squash or some of these other things. So if you allow people to choose their own, flavor creations, especially children and my husband, you might have a lot more success.
So while you're filling those squash, I just wanted to read what Faye shared. Faye said she has a friend who's vegan, and her Thanksgiving main instead of turkey is a stuffed Hubbard squash, which is a kind of a large kind of pumpkin-like squash, and that's her turkey. And she thought that would be a phenomenal choice. And and again, you can vary what those fillings would be if you're filling a squash either as your Thanksgiving main or as a used for leftovers. People like to mix nuts and apples in, with a traditional stuffing or with a wild rice stuffing or anything that kind of fills that starchy role. So you can be creative. So thanks, Chris. Chris likes the idea of allowing each family member to make their own fillings. So this goes in the oven?
Well, actually, so one of the things that I just forgot to mention was that, prior to stuffing it, actually, here, I'll use this one. This is very, very firm. So yes, you absolutely could cook it with the stuffing. However, what we want to do is we need to actually pre-bake the actual shell. Okay, so the oven has already been warmed to 350. So this will actually, however many you have, this will need to bake in a baking dish for 20 minutes, and then it's ready to stuff. So in order to get this ready, again, so you're not going to dry out your stuffings and things. You do actually, this is a very fleshy, large squash. So it is very firm. So you definitely do need to bake it first. So you're just going to place it face down and then put a little bit of water into your baking dish So this will first bake for, and again, there's about half a cup of water in here. This will first bake for about 20 minutes, depending on your oven. Here at the extension office, we have a convection oven, so it worked a little bit faster, but you can check it. You just want it to be nice and soft. And so that, again, your squash won't be falling apart, but you do want to pre-bake your shells prior to adding your stuffing. So this will go in the oven for about 20 minutes, depending on your oven, and then you can actually stuff it. So I got ahead of myself. I do apologize. This is, the beauty of doing live TV is that you get to see all of the foods. But then once we have our pre-baked shell, then we're going to be stuffing it. And then we're going to pop this back in the oven to toast everything to make sure that all of those flavors are infused. Again, this is one of the benefits of adding that low sodium chicken broth is that it is moist. It's not going to dry out, but it is going to bake. And then we will put this in the oven that was already preheated at 350 for about another 20 minutes, depending on your oven.
And we posted the link to the recipe so you can follow the instructions there to make sure you get that order of operations sorted out. So while that squash is, the final product is baking, we are going to go to our Fresh Fit tip for the week. So let's pull that up. Right. So our tip this week is to make Thanksgiving about more than the meal. We have so much to be grateful for in our lives. Hopefully we all can think of things we're grateful for. And having food available to us is obviously one of the things, but let's also be grateful for time spent together as a family, and being active together is one way to enjoy one another. So we have a quick little video of ideas of things that you can do together as a family on Thanksgiving to mark the celebration with some fun and some movement.
Is everybody ready to do the turkey hokey pokey?
Yeah! You put your right wing in, you put your right wing out, you put your right wing in and you shake it all about. You do the turkey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
You put your left wing in, you put your left wing out, you put your left wing in, and you shake it all about.
You do the turkey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. You put your drumstick in, you put your drumstick out, you put your drumstick in and you shake it all about. You do the turkey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
You put your tail feathers in, put your tail feathers out. You put your tail feathers in and you shake them all about.
You do the turkey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
All right. I hope everybody was enjoying shaking their tail feathers a little to that. So yeah, do the turkey hokey pokey, play Turkey Simon Says, go out for a walk, enjoy the fresh air. Hopefully we'll have some good weather, but make Thanksgiving about all that you're grateful for. And being able to move our bodies is one of those things I'm very grateful for. So Haley, we have, spent a few minutes and your squash has been in the oven. So let's take a look at the final dish.
Yes. So with the magic of the internet, we did not actually have to wait the, 25 to 30 minutes after, stuffing the pre-cooked squash. And here we have an example of the finished product. This is, delicious. This will be my lunch. I can't wait. Everyone in my office who can smell everything is really, envious that, I'm going to be enjoying this for my lunch because the office smells great. So here we have, again, you can see how the stuffing is a little bit toasted. The nice fleshy part is definitely like soft. I can easily get my fork in. So as you're actually cutting through, you shouldn't have any problems to get through the squash. We'll go ahead and open it up for everyone, since this will be mine. You know, as you see, that's just absolutely beautiful. But this is also one of the reasons why my children don't share. They like their own adorable little squash, you know, that comes and you know, looks so impressive and, you know, looks like I actually know what I'm doing in my house. And so it looks very pretty before you start to cut it up. But you know, because we're using pre-cooked chicken, turkey, and because we're, you know, using a lot of the, you know, again, the pre-cooked onions, you know, all of these flavors are already ready. There's not any food safety issues because we're using the pre-cooked turkey. If you are going to use this with any other recipe, with any other meat, I do encourage you to use pre-cooked food. So my husband actually asked if, you know, at home, we could use this with ground beef and maybe, you know, use some like you know, marinara sauce, or you make it a little bit more of an Italian style. And that's absolutely, you know, that's a wonderful idea. I hope that as you enjoy this recipe, you'll share your suggestions as well. But you do want to make sure that that meat is pre-cooked prior to filling the shell. And then you won't have any other food safety concerns.
Yeah, Terry said have a squash bar. We thought that's a great idea. Have your squash bowls and fill them with your fillings and of your choice that are all cooked and ready to go. Bake them off and they're ready to go. So wonderful. That looks delicious. We've got vegetables from the squash and the onion. We've got grains from the stuffing, fruits from the cranberries, and some protein from that turkey. So lots of reasons to love this recipe. All right, so thank you so much, Haley. So as I mentioned, this is our last episode of Fresh Fit Fall because we are cruising towards Thanksgiving. So we are going to take the week off next Thursday for Thanksgiving. But we're going to be back in December, Thursdays at 11 o'clock for the Thrifty Holiday Kitchen. So this is going to be a series that kind of extends on what we talked about today about making it through the holidays with the food, you know, approaching the food aspect of the holidays with your budget in mind. So every Thursday in December leading up to the holidays, and then we're actually going to extend through January with more Thrifty Kitchen tips for winter cooking. So if you're watching this on Facebook, you know where to find us. Make sure you've liked our Facebook page and turned on notifications. And yeah, check out our Facebook and Instagram stories this week to vote on what you want to see in December. We want to know from you if you want to see holiday mains, holiday sides, party foods, or, you know, healthy desserts. So let us know what you're interested in. Speaking of our various social media feeds, here's where to find us on the internet. We've got our extension.umd.edu/eatsmart. That is our website where all of our recipes can be found. You also can find us on Facebook, YouTube. We have all of the archived episodes of Fresh Fit Fall, our other live series that we've done, lots of nutrition education lessons, recipe videos, lots of great resources there that you can check out. And then we are on Instagram, so follow us there as well. So thanks to everyone who joined us. Thanks for your comments and questions. And we won't see you next week, but we hope you will join us in December. Well, first, I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and that you will join us back here in December at 11 o'clock on Thursdays for our Thrifty Holiday Kitchen series. Thanks a lot and goodbye.